What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. In today's video, I want to get into a couple different things with you. First, Aaron Rodgers goes on Pardon My Take to discuss training camp and the New York Jets 2024 season, as well as Breece Hall talks about a new role in the New York Jets offense. So on the podcast, Aaron Rodgers talked about a ton of different things because that's what he does. He goes on and they talk football, they talk life, the whole thing. I'm sure you've watched Aaron Rodgers interviews. I want to focus on some things that he mentioned that were football related. The first, obviously, the elephant in the room was his absence from the mandatory minicamp, and I will share with you the quote that he had on the show. The thing that people don't understand was that when I was in the NFC North years ago, there used to be a real thing called minicamp where it was 5 practices in 3 days. Now it's not minicamp. They can arbitrarily put a tag on whatever week of OTAs they want and say this is the minicamp week, which makes it more mandatory than the other weeks, but it was an OTA schedule. That's how words can be a little deceiving from time to time. It can make a story about how I missed a minicamp when it was really 2 OTA days. I came to the first 10. This kind of coincides with my stance, the Jets stance on it, and pretty much anyone internally has had a very similar read to the scenario. That was Aaron Rodgers missed mandatory minicamp. Would you have liked him to be there? Probably yes. Like in a perfect world, Aaron Rodgers being at minicamp is where you would like him to be. But caveat here, the caveat is he was at the first 10 of those. It was 2 practices. He was at all the voluntary stuff, and he's going to be at training camp, which he talked about. Now, veterans, and Aaron Rodgers is a veteran, doesn't really love training camp. Most don't because, earlier in his career it was very taxing. They would do the 2-a-days and that stuff. And now, this go around, there's a lot of meetings. The practices are shorter. They don't play in preseason games, all that stuff. So Aaron Rodgers and veterans not really liking the training camp part of things is very common. It is very, very common. That's why guys retire. Guys don't retire because they don't want to do the Sunday or, action, or they don't want to, be with their teammates. More often than not, it's the work and the training that goes into being able to play those 17 games a season and playoffs. That's what it really comes down to. And for Aaron Rodgers, he, again, going back to the main point here was that I don't think 2 days of minicamp is going to really change anything, especially when he reports tomorrow and is there for the entirety of training camp. That is significantly more important than just a couple of OTA days that were worded as minicamp days. When you're seriously hurt, your injury could be worth millions. Morgan & Morgan doesn't settle for lowball offers. They achieved significant verdicts in the past couple of months for victims involved in life-altering car crashes. It only takes a few short minutes to see if you have a case, and the fee is absolutely free unless you win. Over 3 million people like you call them every single year in their time of need, and they've recovered over $20 billion for their clients over the years. If you've ever gotten seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and you're only a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. It's so easy. You can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at forthepeople.com/Matt, found in the description, or by scanning the QR code on your screen from your phone's camera. You can contact Morgan & Morgan today. Something else that was interesting was they asked Aaron Rodgers about playing against the San Francisco 49ers on opening night. And Rodgers made a comment about playing on a grass field. He's like, 49ers play on grass. I'm happy about that, which goes back to a point that I've brought up a few times with the New York Jets and how I would wish that they changed their turf to grass. They changed the turf going from 2022 into 23. It was supposed to be better, And unfortunately, we know that that wasn't necessarily the case. You had the Aaron Rodgers injury, Jalen Phillips injury as well. Those are just a couple that I remember off the top of my head, but the point stays the same, that the players prefer to play on grass. Looking forward to going out there and playing against the 49ers. Now, they're also making this a bigger deal on the show because Aaron Rodgers hasn't had the best success in the playoffs against the San Francisco 49ers in his career. Regular season, pretty good numbers, which is good, and that matters more for the Jets in week one. But in the playoffs, they've kind of had his number. And, you know, you had the times where they've gone out to San Francisco and really not played all that great. And then you had the most recent time in the playoffs where, you know, Aaron Rodgers has an MVP season, his last playoff game in Green Bay, and they struggle. They lose a game and they don't really score a ton of points. So that's the lasting memory for a lot of people for Aaron Rodgers against the 49ers, is that the 49ers have his number. That's true in the playoffs. Regular season, Rodgers, I believe 6-3. I'm pulling that one off the top of my head. I believe it is 6-3. Okay, now there is a part 2 to this video. I didn't want to only come on and talk about the Aaron Rodgers thing. Saw a quote from Breece Hall that really got me excited, and really this should not come as a surprise to anyone who was planning on watching New York Jets football games this year, just because it's, again, going to be commonplace for Breece Hall to get many touches this year. And he was on with Kay Adams, and here was his quote: "Me being the bell cow of the team, I'm going to be getting the ball the most other than him being Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to be touching the ball the most. For me, I'm trying to put our team in the best position possible." That gets me excited, and again, is coincides with my belief going into the year that Breece is going to be a bell cow back and going to just have a monster season. This past year, he had 223 rushes, which ranked him 14th in the NFL. There were 13 players that had more rushing attempts than him. Derrick Henry led the way with 280. I think we see Breece somewhere in the top 5. Maybe he could even push for number 1, but just to give you a reference point of what it looks like to be the leading rusher in terms of attempts, he's going to need about 57 more rushing attempts over a 17-game season. Do the math on that, not a math guy, but he's going to have to get a few extra carries. And they kind of brought him on slowly last year. He didn't really ramp up into the second half. So with that being the case, I see no reason to believe that he won't be top 5. And when looking at just in general of how he's going to be involved in the offense, he's not just going to rush the ball, he's going to catch passes. He had 76 catches last year, which was second only behind Christian McCaffrey. So Christian McCaffrey was the only running back to have more. I think he will likely be, Breece Hall that is, will likely be top 3 again, and has a very real chance to be number 1 in rushing attempts and number 1 in receptions for running backs this year. Again, he wasn't far off at all from the receiving side of things. He's going to get a better quarterback this year. Also, the New York Jets are going to, hopefully, knock on wood, lead in more games this year, which then, as a result of that, would mean more rushing attempts as they begin to close out games. I think it's fair to assume that you're going to get probably, I'll go even conservative here and say 250 plus rushes from him if he's playing a full 17 games, and 80 plus catches as well. Probably even higher on the rushes. I don't know if he goes over 280, but we were looking at like 265, somewhere in that range. I think he is going to be a bell cow back. I don't think he was speaking out of turn. He's going to get the rock a lot and make Aaron Rodgers' life significantly easier. And thank God the offensive line is easier as thank God the offensive line, there we go, I don't know why words are hard this morning, will make Breece Hall's life even easier as well, because it is much improved this year. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's video. Make sure before you go to subscribe, leave a like, comment down below. I appreciate you. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you next time.